What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA playoffs, Thursday, June 10th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, NBA playoffs. We have a 2-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. With James Harden out, I like Kyrie Irving from the Brooklyn Nets playing the Milwaukee Bucks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing point guards. Kyrie Irving has averaged 45.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 35 minutes per game with a 31% usage rate. He scored 39, 48, and 36 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 33, 44, and 37 minutes. He's projected at 47.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.9 times value. He's $9,700 FanDuel salary, and he's the same price on DraftKings. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 234 points scored in this game, so it's a great game to stack, especially with James Harden out. You can find some value on the Brooklyn Nets. So I like Kyrie Irving here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, another point guard that I like is Jordan Clarkson from the Utah Jazz playing the LA Clippers. Jordan Clarkson has averaged 28.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with a 30% usage rate. He scored 25, 32, and 28 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 28, 30, and 21 minutes. He's projected at 27.2 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.7 times value. He's $5,800 FanDuel salary and $500 more on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 221 points scored in this game, so I like Jordan Clarkson here versus the LA Clippers. Okay, now on DraftKings, if you're looking for a value play, take a look at Mike James from the Brooklyn Nets. He scored 21 and 25 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 23 and 30 minutes. He's projected at 21.2 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.4 times value because he's $4,800 FanDuel salary, but he's $1,000 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So I like Mike James on DraftKings here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Now just keep an eye on Mike Conley. If Mike Conley does play here tonight, they'll probably take me off a guy like Jordan Clarkson, so just keep an eye on that injury. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. Now if Mike Conley is out, I like Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz playing the LA Clippers. Donovan Mitchell has averaged 40.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 34% usage rate. He scored 59, 52, and 49 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 36, 29, and 34 minutes. He had a 43% usage rate last game, so that's monster usage, and he's projected at 49 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.2 times value. He's $9,500 FanDuel salary, and he's $600 less on DraftKings. So I like Donovan Mitchell here versus the LA Clippers. Okay, now this next pick, this is a high risk, high reward, low ownership tournament play. I mean, it doesn't get any more risky than this, but he is playing a bunch of minutes, and he had a decent game last game, and he is capable of scoring 30 fantasy points when he gets going. So if you're looking for a high risk, high reward tournament play, take a look at Joe Ingles From the Utah Jazz, playing the LA Clippers, Joe Ingles has averaged 24.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 21, 14, and 16 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 27, and 23 minutes. So I like that he played 32 minutes last game. If you can get Joe Ingles for 30 minutes or more, he has a great chance at hitting value. He's projected at 23.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's 4,600 FanDuel salary and 100 more on DraftKings. So I like Joe Ingles as a high risk, high reward play here versus the LA Clippers. Okay, now this is going to be a DraftKings play only for me. I like Bruce Brown from the Brooklyn Nets playing the Milwaukee Bucks. Bruce Brown has averaged 20.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 22 minutes per game with a 16% usage rate. He scored 26, 24, and 31 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 25, 21, and 23 minutes. He's projected at 26 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.4 times value because he's 5,900 FanDuel salary. So I'm not going to play him on FanDuel, but he's 1,700 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So I like Bruce Brown on DraftKings here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Kawhi Leonard from the LA Clippers playing the Utah Jazz. Kawhi Leonard has averaged 44.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 29% usage rate. He scored 39, 69, and 59 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 42, and 41 minutes. He's projected at 55 fantasy points here tonight. Even on FanDuel, that's 5 times value. He's 11,000 FanDuel salary, and he's 1,400 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So I like Kawhi Leonard here versus the Utah Jazz. Okay, now this is going to be a FanDuel play for me only. I like Bojan Bogdanovic from the Utah Jazz playing the LA Clippers. Bojan Bogdanovic has averaged 24.8 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 23% usage rate. He scored 29, 36, and 17 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 37, 31, and 33 minutes. He's projected at 26.2 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.8 times value. He's 5,400 FanDuel salary, and he's 500 more on DraftKings. So I like Bojan Bogdanovic on FanDuel here versus the LA Clippers. Okay, now here's a stud pick for you with no James Harden, probably one of the best stud picks on the slate. Take a look at Kevin Durant from the Brooklyn Nets playing the Milwaukee Bucks. Kevin Durant has averaged 46.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 31% usage rate. He scored 49, 52, and 40 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 40, and 37 minutes. He's projected at 50.1 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.7 times value, but he's got 60, 70 point fantasy point upside, so he could be a monster play here tonight. He's 10,700 FanDuel salary, and he's 100 less on DraftKings. So I like Kevin Durant here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, now this is a DraftKings play only. If you're looking for a value play on DraftKings, take a look at Nicholas Batum. He scored 16, 35, and 23 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 20, 41, and 36 minutes. He's projected at 25 fantasy points here tonight. Now, on FanDuel, that's only 4.5 times value because he's 5,600 FanDuel salary, but he's 1,200 less on DraftKings. So that would be well over 5 times value on DraftKings. So I like Nicholas Batum on DraftKings here versus the Utah Jazz. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. Another stud pick. I like Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Milwaukee Bucks playing the Brooklyn Nets, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. Giannis Antetokounmpo has averaged 53.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 33% usage rate. He scored 37, 54, and 61 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 35, and 36 minutes. He's projected at 55 fantasy points here tonight. That's just about 5 times value. He's 11,300 FanDuel salary, and he's 200 less on DraftKings. So I like Giannis Antetokounmpo here versus the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, another power forward that I like is Blake Griffin from the Brooklyn Nets playing the Milwaukee Bucks. Blake Griffin has averaged 23.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 26 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. He scored 24, 42, and 11 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 25, 35, and 18 minutes. He's projected at 26 fantasy points here tonight. On FanDuel, that's 4.7 times value because he's 5,500 FanDuel salary, but he's 700 less on DraftKings. So I like Blake Griffin here versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, now this is probably my favorite value play on the slate, or mid-range play. Take a look at Royce O'Neal from the Utah Jazz playing the LA Clippers. Royce O'Neal, now he only averaged 21.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 10% usage rate, but take a look at his last 3 games. He scored 31, 42, and 30 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 35, and 34 minutes. He's projected at 30 fantasy points here tonight, and even on FanDuel, that's 5.2 times value. He's 5,800 FanDuel salary, and he's 700 less on DraftKings. So I like Royce O'Neal here versus the LA Clippers. Okay, moving on to the center position. Really, there's not much at the center position. There's a lot of risky plays. So if you just want a solid center, I would go with Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz playing the LA Clippers. Rudy Gobert has averaged 40.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 31, 52, and 34 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 33, 33, and 32 minutes. He's been super consistent throughout the season and through the playoffs, and he's projected at 42.6 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's 4.8 times value because he's 8,800 FanDuel salary, but he's 1,100 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So I like Rudy Gobert here versus the LA Clippers. Okay, now if you want to take a shot on some of these low salary centers, take a look at Derek Favors, who's only 3,800 FanDuel salary. He's 700 less on DraftKings. He scored 20 fantasy points in 14 minutes last game. So he's a high risk, high reward play if you're looking for a low salary play. And then take a look at Ivica Zubac, who scored 32 fantasy points in 20 minutes last game. Now, he's $5,000 FanDuel salary, so I'm not going to go there, but he's $1,400 less on DraftKings. So I think he makes an interesting DraftKings play. So I like Ivica Zubac here on DraftKings here versus the Utah Jazz. If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.